Let me tell you something real. The greatest battle you'll ever fight is not out there in the world, but in your own mind. Your thoughts are the architects of your future, and the way you think determines the way you move, the way you grind, and the way you rise. So today, I'm not here to entertain you. I'm here to elevate you. I will teach you how to think correctly, because the mindset you carry will either build your empire or destroy your potential before you even step onto the field. Thinking long term instead of last minute is one of the most powerful shifts a person can make, because it transforms how you make decisions, how you prepare, and how you calculate your moves. When you think last minute, you live in reaction mode, always responding to problems, always scrambling, always trying to fix things after they've already gone wrong. It keeps your mind in survival mode, where your choices are based on urgency instead of clarity. But when you think long term, you place yourself in a position of control. You begin to move from intention, not impulse. You start asking questions like, will this decision still benefit me in 5 years? Instead of what feels good right now. That one shift alone changes your entire direction. Long-term thinking teaches patience, but not the kind that sits still. It's the patience that builds, invests, and prepares. You start valuing quality over speed, foundation over shortcuts, and strategy over noise. People who think long-term don't get distracted by instant gratification because they're focused on the bigger outcome. They aren't performing for applause. They're building systems that last, habits that grow, and results that stack on top of each other. You become less emotional and more intentional because you realize not every opportunity is worth taking, and not every setback is worth reacting to. Every move becomes a brick in a structure you're consciously building. Thinking long-term also gives you resilience. When you expect growth to take time, delays don't discourage you. They're simply part of the process. You no longer quit because something didn't happen fast enough. Instead, you adjust, improve, and continue forward. This mindset separates those who rise from those who stay stuck. Most failures come from expecting success too quickly and giving up too early. When you understand that real progress is a marathon, not a sprint, you stop abandoning your goals halfway. A simple example illustrates this clearly. Imagine two people wanting to start a business. The first one rushes in immediately, spending money on everything that looks exciting, branding, ads, equipment, without planning or understanding the market. They want fast results, and within months, they're overwhelmed, broke, and frustrated. The second person takes time to study the field, learns the skills, builds a savings buffer, tests small ideas, and slowly builds a customer base before going full scale. The first collapses. The second succeeds, not because they were smarter, but because they thought long term. That is the difference between chasing wins and building a future. Self-control is one of the most valuable forms of intelligence you can ever develop because it determines how you use your time, your energy, and your emotions. Most people lose not because they lack talent, but because they lack the discipline to slow down, breathe, and think before they move. When you act on impulse, you let emotions take the steering wheel. Anger, excitement, fear, ego. All of these can blind you, make you rush, and push you into decisions you'll regret. But when you understand the power of self-control, you stop reacting and start responding. You gain the ability to pause long enough to choose the move that benefits your future instead of the move that satisfies your moment. Self-control doesn't mean suppressing your emotions. It means mastering them. It means having the strength to walk away when your pride wants you to fight, to stay focused when distractions tempt you, and to stay quiet when silence protects your energy. When you practice self-control, you become unshakable. People can't manipulate you as easily. Situations can't throw you off your path. You don't get trapped in cycles that drain you. You choose your battles, you protect your peace, and you keep your mind sharp enough to see opportunities that impulsive people overlook. Your decisions start aligning with your growth instead of your weaknesses. The real power of self-control is how it strengthens your long-term success. It helps you build habits, maintain discipline, and avoid mistakes that cost you time and progress. With self-control, you don't get pulled into emotional arguments, unnecessary spending, sudden decisions, or toxic environments. You learn to think in terms of consequences, patterns, and purpose. You begin to move with precision instead of chaos. Here's an example that makes this clear. Imagine two friends working at the same job. One gets frustrated easily. Whenever a supervisor corrects him, he reacts instantly with attitude. Eventually, he loses his position because his impulse made him look unprofessional. The other friend also feels frustrated sometimes, but he practices self-control. When something irritates him, he pauses. Instead of reacting, he listens, takes feedback, and responds calmly. Over time, he gets promoted, not because he's more skilled, but because he's more disciplined. His self-control made him reliable, stable, and respected. That's the real lesson. Talent may open the door, but self-control decides whether you get to stay inside. Replacing emotion with evaluation is one of the most powerful shifts a person can make because it allows you to navigate life with clarity instead of chaos. Emotion isn't the enemy, it's natural and human. But when emotion becomes the driver of your decisions, it blinds you from the truth. It makes you take things personally that aren't personal, react to situations before understanding them, and assume your feelings are facts. What correct thinking truly requires is the ability to step outside the moment, detach from the emotional storm, and analyze reality with a calm, clear mind. When you learn to evaluate instead of react, you gain control over your choices, your future, and your direction. Evaluation means asking questions before making moves. What is actually happening here? What patterns am I seeing? What's my role in this situation? What's the evidence, not the emotion? This mindset forces you to slow down and observe yourself as much as you observe the world around you. Instead of saying, I feel disrespected, you ask, was this truly disrespect or just a misunderstanding? Instead of saying, I feel like I'm failing, you ask, what do the actual results show? This shift removes the guesswork and replaces it with awareness. It stops you from creating problems in your mind that don't exist in reality. By evaluating yourself honestly, you grow faster. You start recognizing your weaknesses without shame. You see where you repeat the same mistakes. You understand what triggers your emotional reactions and learn how to control them. Evaluation turns your mind into a strategic tool instead of a battlefield where emotions run wild. People who replace emotion with evaluation don't fall for every distraction. They don't explode in anger, collapse in fear, or chase temporary satisfaction. They see the bigger picture and move with intention. Here's an example that illustrates this perfectly. Imagine someone receives a short, blunt message from their boss saying, we need to talk tomorrow. The emotionally driven person panics, assumes the worst, spends the whole night in fear, and even considers quitting. They let their feelings create a story with no evidence. The person who uses evaluation pauses and asks, what do I actually know? Has there been any problem? Could this be about a new project or responsibility? Instead of spiraling emotionally, they stay calm. The next day, they find out the meeting was to discuss a promotion. One person suffered unnecessarily, the other stayed grounded, simply because one reacted with emotion, while the other responded with evaluation. That's the difference. Emotion clouds judgment, but evaluation reveals truth. Moving from a victim mindset to an accountability mindset is one of the most transformative shifts a person can make because it gives you back the power you unknowingly gave away. A victim mindset convinces you that life is happening to you, not because of you. It makes you focus on everything you can't control, other people's choices, your past, your circumstances, the setbacks you didn't expect. And when you keep focusing on what's outside your control, you stay stuck. You wait for someone to save you, someone to apologize, someone to fix what went wrong. You end up living in blame instead of progress. But the moment you move into an accountability mindset, everything changes. Accountability doesn't mean everything is your fault. It means you take responsibility for how you respond, how you rebuild, and how you rise. It means you stop letting excuses shape your life. You stop saying, if only they treated me better, and start saying, how can I improve myself despite this? You stop saying life is unfair and start asking, what can I do with what I have? Accountability turns you from a passenger into the driver of your own journey. When you adopt accountability, you think differently. You start noticing solutions instead of barriers. You stop running from your mistakes and start learning from them. You make choices with intention because you understand that every decision is a step toward the life you want or the life you're trying to escape. This mindset builds confidence, because every time you take ownership, you prove to yourself that you're capable. It builds resilience because you learn to adapt instead of collapse. It builds discipline because you realize nobody is coming to do the work for you. A simple example makes this clear. Imagine two students who fail the same exam. The first student falls into a victim mindset. They blame the teacher, the difficulty of the questions, the lack of time, everything but themselves. They stay angry, but they don't improve. The second student takes the accountability route. They admit they didn't prepare well enough. They analyze which chapters they misunderstood. They ask questions, study harder, and practice consistently. On the next exam, the first student fails again. The second student passes with confidence. The difference wasn't intelligence. It wasn't luck. It was mindset. AC. Accountability doesn't just change your results. It changes your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone life happens to and start seeing yourself as someone who shapes their own destiny. That shift is the beginning of real power. Protecting your energy and environment is essential because your mind can only grow in places where it is supported, nourished, and challenged in the right way. You cannot expect to think with clarity if you live in chaos, nor can you expect to evolve if you're surrounded by people who pull you backward. Your environment shapes your thoughts more than you realize. The conversations you hear, the habits you see, the energy you feel, the content you consume, these things quietly plant seeds in your mind. Over time, those seeds grow into beliefs, behaviors, and patterns. If the environment is negative, your mind absorbs negativity. If the environment is driven, focused, and disciplined, your mind rises to match it. When you protect your energy, you become selective about who gets access to you. Not everyone deserves your presence, your time, or your mental space. Some people drain you without you realizing it. They complain constantly, talk small, think small, and live small. Spending too much time around them weakens your ambition. On the other hand, being around people who inspire you makes you think bigger, act sharper, and aim higher. Protecting your energy means cutting off the noise, gossip, drama, pointless arguments, distractions that steal your focus. Your mind needs peace to think correctly, and peace doesn't exist in chaos. Protecting your environment also means monitoring what you consume. What you watch, listen to, and read influences your mindset just as much as the people around you. If you constantly feed your mind negativity, you start expecting negativity. If you constantly feed it wisdom, discipline, and knowledge, you say, art, moving differently. Correct thinking cannot exist in a polluted mental space. You must become the gatekeeper of your own mind. Here's a simple example that illustrates this clearly. Imagine someone who wants to get in shape. They join a gym but start going with friends who complain about the workouts, skip sessions, and constantly convince them to take it easy. Even with the same goals, the environment pulls them backward. Eventually, they lose motivation. Now imagine the same person going to the gym with people who push harder, stay consistent, and celebrate progress. In that environment, the person not only stays committed, they improve faster. The goal didn't change, the circle did. And the circle changed the outcome. Your energy is your currency. Your environment is your foundation. Protect both, and your mind will grow into something powerful. Training your mind like a muscle is one of the most transformative principles you can adopt because it reminds you that mental strength isn't something you're born with. It's something you build. Just like physical muscles weaken without use, your mind becomes dull, slow, and easily influenced when you don't challenge it. Strong thinking requires effort. It demands consistency. It needs daily reps. You can't expect sharp decisions, powerful clarity, or disciplined focus if you never stretch your mind beyond what's comfortable. The more you learn, question, analyze, and practice, the stronger your mental foundation becomes. Training your mind begins with feeding it the right information. Reading, studying, learning new skills. These activities expand your perspectives and deepen your understanding. They help you see patterns, avoid mistakes, and recognize opportunities others overlook. But it's not just about gaining knowledge. It's about sharpening your thinking. Question your assumptions. Challenge your beliefs. And accept ideas simply because they feel familiar or popular. When you force your mind to think critically, it becomes more resilient and less vulnerable to confusion, manipulation, or emotional impulsiveness. Discipline is a key part of mental training. Your focus must be exercised the same way you'd strengthen a muscle. In a world filled with distractions, your ability to concentrate becomes a superpower. Training your mind means limiting unnecessary noise, choosing environments that support clarity, and practicing concentration through productive habits. Whether it's studying, planning, or solving problems, your mental endurance grows each time you commit to focused work without giving in to distractions. Finally, your mind grows when you push it beyond comfort. Learning something difficult, trying new experiences, or solving complex challenges all strengthen your cognitive muscles. Just like lifting heavier weights, the struggle is part of the growth. When you avoid challenges, your mind stays weak. When you embrace them, your intellect expands. A simple example makes this clear. Imagine two people working in the same office. One finishes tasks slowly, avoids learning new systems, and sticks to the same routine every day. Their mind stays in the same place. The second person challenges themselves. They read industry books, learn new software, ask questions, and take on tasks that stretch their abilities. Over months, their thinking becomes sharper, faster, and more strategic. Soon they're given leadership roles, not because they were naturally smarter, but because they train their mind like a muscle. Mental strength is built, not gifted. The more you train it, the more powerful your life becomes. Making decisions that match your future instead of your past is a powerful shift, because it forces you to stop living in old patterns and start living in your potential. Most people stay stuck not because they lack opportunities, but because they continue choosing from an outdated version of themselves. They let old habits, old fears, old mistakes, and old identities guide their present actions. When you operate from your past, you repeat cycles. You stay in the same relationships, the same environments, the same comfort zones, even when they no longer serve you. You choose what's familiar instead of what's right. When you begin making choices based on who you want to become rather than who you used to be, everything in your life starts leveling up. This mindset requires honesty. You must acknowledge the behaviors that kept you stuck. Maybe you used to procrastinate, get distracted easily, or settle for less than you deserved. Maybe you allowed your emotions to control your actions, or you avoided discomfort because you didn't believe in yourself. These patterns belong to your past, but if you don't consciously outgrow them, they will quietly shape your future. Making decisions that match your future means asking yourself in every moment, is this choice supporting the life I'm building or feeding the life I'm trying to leave behind? That one question separates growth from regression. When you make decisions from your future self mindset, you naturally start protecting your time, choosing better relationships, investing in better habits, and saying no to anything that pulls you backward. You stop settling because settling is something the old version of you did. You start embracing discipline because your future requires it. You prioritize learning, health, investment, and consistency because that's what the next level of you demands. This mindset is not about perfection, it's about direction. Every decision becomes a step toward who you're becoming. Here's an example that captures this clearly. Imagine someone who spent years being irresponsible with money, overspending, avoiding saving, and buying things just to impress others. That's their past identity. Now they want financial freedom, but if they continue making the same emotional, impulsive purchases, their future will look exactly like their past. So instead, they start choosing differently. Every time they're tempted to waste money, they ask themselves, is this a decision the future version of me, the disciplined, successful, financially free me would make? That question pulls them toward better choices, saving instead of spending, investing instead of showing off, budgeting instead of guessing. Over time, these small but aligned decisions completely transform their life. Your future is built through the decisions you make today. Choose like the person you're becoming, not the person you're leaving behind. Thinking independently instead of popularly is one of the strongest signs of a powerful mind, because it means you're no longer controlled by trends, opinions, or the pressure to fit in. Most people never develop their own thinking. They simply repeat what they hear, follow what everyone else is doing, and shape their lives around that society expects from them. Popular thinking is comfortable, but it's also dangerous. It keeps you average. It keeps you afraid of standing out. It makes you doubt your own judgment because you're always waiting for someone else to validate your choices. But when you think independently, you stop following the crowd and start following your truth. Independent thinking requires courage because it means valuing your own perspective even when it's not the most accepted one. It means listening to your intuition as much as the world around you. It teaches you to question everything, your habits, your beliefs, your environment, even what you've been taught. Instead of assuming something is true because everyone believes it, you learn to examine it for yourself. You develop the confidence to walk alone if needed. And that confidence separates leaders from followers. Popular thinking makes you blend in. Independent thinking makes you rise. When you think independently, your decisions become stronger because they're based on logic, values, and vision, not pressure or fear. You become less reactive to trends and more focused on what actually works for your life. You stop chasing approval and start chasing progress. You're no longer swayed by the opinions of people who aren't living your life or carrying your responsibilities. This frees you from comparison, competition, and insecurity because you finally understand that your direction doesn't need confirmation from anyone else. A simple example makes this clear. Imagine a student choosing what to study. All their friends are picking a popular major because it sounds cool or because it's trending on social media. The student feels the pressure to choose the same path, even though their real passion is in design. If they follow the crowd, they'll spend years studying something they don't care about, just to fit in. But if they think independently, they choose design despite it not being popular in their group. Over time, they excel, build skill, create a portfolio, and eventually turn their passion into a career. Meanwhile, some of their friends who followed the trend end up unhappy or switching majors. The only difference was courage, the courage to think independently. When you stop thinking popularly and start thinking independently, you stop living someone else's life and start living your own. That's when your real growth begins. Focusing on solutions instead of problems is one of the greatest skills you can develop because it shifts your mind from feeling overwhelmed to taking control. When you focus only on the problem, your energy goes into frustration, fear, and panic. You replay what went wrong. You blame, you stress, and you convince yourself the situation is bigger than you are. The problem grows in your mind because you're feeding it attention. But when you switch your focus to solutions, your mind becomes sharper, calmer, and more strategic. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what can I do about it? That one question changes everything. A solution-focused mindset forces you to stay practical. You analyze the situation, break it down into pieces, and look for leverage points. You stop drowning in emotion and start navigating with clarity. Every obstacle becomes information, data you can use to adjust. Instead of seeing problems as walls, you start seeing them as puzzles. You understand that no matter how difficult a situation looks, there is always a way forward, a step you can take, a skill you can build, a perspective you can shift. When you think like this, your confidence grows because you know challenges don't stop you, they sharpen you. This mindset also keeps you from wasting time on things you cannot control. When you focus on the problem, you get stuck in the past. When you focus on a solution, you move toward the future. You start noticing possibilities you couldn't see before because your attention was clouded by negativity. Solutions come to the mind that stays calm, disciplined, and focused. And the more you practice this, the stronger your mental resilience becomes. You stop reacting emotionally and start responding intelligently. Here's a simple example that illustrates this perfectly. Imagine someone's car breaks down on the way to an important job interview. A problem-focused person panics. They sit in the car complaining, stressing, and imagining everything going wrong. They waste precious time because their mind is stuck on what happened. A solution-focused person reacts differently. They immediately call a ride service, message the interviewer to explain the situation professionally, and keep moving. They don't let the problem decide the outcome. They decide it. In many cases, the interviewer will understand and still give them the opportunity simply because they handled the situation responsibly. Two people faced the same problem. Only one kept moving. That's the power of focusing on solutions. The problem stops controlling you, and you start controlling the outcome. If you truly want to elevate your life, you must elevate your mind first. Change your thoughts, and your entire world will shift with you. You can have the talent, the connections, the opportunities. But if your thinking is weak, everything you touch will crumble. But if your thinking is strong, disciplined, and precise, there is nothing that can block what's coming your way. Think correctly, and the life you dream of will start chasing you.